black man pulled over by racist cop. Turns out he's internal affairs chief. The sun had barely begun its ascent over the skyline of Fairgrove City, its golden rays slicing through the clouds like a slow, moving spotlight cast across the urban stage, when Chief Marcus Hale stepped out of his modest brick home tucked in the quiet neighborhood of Eastbridge. Dressed in a tailored navy suit that hugged his broad shoulders and slim waist, Marcus moved with the calm precision of a man who had seen the underbelly of justice and lived to make it better. He adjusted his silver cufflinks, glanced at his watch, a vintage Rolex gifted to him by a retiring judge, and nodded to himself. His morning ritual never changed: a black coffee brewed precisely at 60:15, a 10-minute read of the Tribune, and a short drive across the city to a meeting with the mayor's oversight committee. It was supposed to be a simple day. A policy update, a few stern words to the commissioners about transparency and integrity. Nothing more. As he slid into his matte black SUV, an older model BMW X5 with tinted windows and not a single badge or sticker to identify who sat inside, Marcus exhaled slowly and turned the ignition. The engine purred to life, quiet and unassuming, much like him. He didn't need fanfare. After 3 decades in law enforcement, 2 Purple Hearts, and the mantle of Chief of Internal Affairs resting on his name, Marcus had learned to let his presence speak louder than the brass on his chest ever could. As he pulled out onto Crestline Avenue, the traffic lights blinked amber in rhythm with the soft jazz humming from his speakers. He kept his hands at 10 and 2, not out of habit but out of instinct. A survival instinct too familiar to black men, even those who carried authority. Marcus never forgot what it meant to be seen as a black man first and a chief second, if at all. He cruised past the old church where his father had preached fire and forgiveness, past Mrs. Ellis watering her roses in a floral housecoat, past the high school he once protected from the inside during his days as a beat cop. Everything felt familiar. Until it didn't. Just as he crossed into the more affluent part of town, toward Arbor Hills, Marcus noticed it. A white cruiser with blue stripes. It had slid in behind him 2 blocks back, unnoticed at first in the stream of morning traffic, but now it lingered. Close, too close. Marcus adjusted his rearview mirror. The license plate read 9082YJ. He didn't recognize the number, but the pattern was all too familiar. Slow tail, no sirens, no rush to overtake. A predator circling. His jaw tightened, but he kept his face unreadable. 2 more turns. The cruiser stayed on him. Then came the flashing lights. Not urgent, not frantic, just a pulsing signal of control. Marcus sighed, signaling right and pulling calmly into the shoulder beside a row of manicured hedges. He turned down the music and rested his hands visibly on the steering wheel. It wasn't his first time being stopped without cause, but the irony stung sharper today. Chief of Internal Affairs, pulled over on his way to a city meeting about racial profiling. The officer took his time approaching. Marcus watched through the side mirror as a tall, pale-skinned man in his late 30s strutted forward with the arrogance of someone who had never been challenged by consequence. His nameplate read Copa R. Officer Bradley Cooper. A name Marcus had heard before but never met in person. There had been whispers, community complaints, minor infractions brushed aside. Today would be different. Tap tap. The officer knocked on the glass. Roll your window down, he barked. Marcus complied slowly. Good morning, officer, he said evenly. No response. Cooper's eyes darted around the interior, scanning for something, anything, weapons, drugs, maybe just a reason to escalate. License and registration. No explanation. No courtesy, just assumption. Marcus reached for the glove box with deliberate caution. Is there a reason I was pulled over? He asked. Cooper smirked. You were weaving back there. Looked a little suspicious. Lot of break-ins in this area lately. Marcus raised an eyebrow. He hadn't weaved once. He'd driven like a textbook. But Cooper wasn't interested in truth. He was performing a role he knew too well. Authority unchecked. Marcus handed over his license and registration, watching as Cooper scanned the name. There was a flicker of recognition. Marcus Hale. But it didn't click. Not yet. Cooper glanced back at the cruiser, then back at Marcus. Mind if I ask what you're doing in this part of town? Marcus met his gaze. I'm heading to a meeting with the city's oversight board. A beat passed. At City Hall. Another pause. Cooper didn't budge. You work for the city. Marcus smiled slightly. In a manner of speaking. The tension rose like static in the air. The officer narrowed his eyes. Step out of the vehicle for me. It wasn't a request. Marcus didn't move. On what grounds? Cooper's hand twitched near his hip. Step out. Now. Another cruiser pulled up behind them. Backup for what? A clean-cut black man driving a decent SUV on a Tuesday morning. Marcus sighed and opened the door. I have no weapons. I'm complying fully. Just remember, you're being recorded. His phone had been discreetly filming since the lights went on. Cooper stepped back, hand on his holster anyway. As Marcus stood, the second officer, shorter, stockier, with a buzz cut and mirrored shades, emerged from the second cruiser. "Everything good?" he asked. "We'll see," Cooper replied. "I'm gonna need to search the vehicle." Marcus folded his arms. "You don't have probable cause. You were swerving. That's cause enough." "That's a lie," Marcus said, his voice harder now. "And you know it." Cooper stepped closer. "Are you resisting a lawful search?" "I'm refusing an unlawful one." The second officer glanced between them, visibly unsure now. Cooper took another step, now toe to toe with Marcus. "I can detain you right now. You want to keep pushing it?" Marcus stared at him, unblinking. "You sure you want to do that?" he asked. "Because once this badge comes out, there's no turning back." For a moment, Cooper hesitated. Then he laughed, dismissing the comment like a bluff. "Badge? What badge?" Marcus nodded toward the glove compartment. "Open it." Slowly, Cooper glanced at the second officer, then opened the glove box. There, nestled between insurance papers and a leathered-bound planner, was a gold shield embossed with the seal of the Fairgrove Internal Affairs Bureau. Division Chief Marcus L. Hale. A laminated ID bore his photo, rank, authority, power. The air snapped into silence. The second officer took a step back, removing his sunglasses as if to confirm what he was seeing. Cooper's face drained of color, his lips parted, searching for words. This isn't." "What, officer?" Marcus said, stepping forward now, his voice sharp as a blade. "Not what you expected. Not what your profile told you. Not the outcome you were hoping for." Cooper stammered. I didn't know that I was in charge of investigating people like you." Marcus's voice cut through him. "That I oversee the misconduct division. That I sit across from the commissioner every Friday to review cases just like this one." The second officer muttered. "We didn't realize. You didn't care." Marcus snapped. "Because to you, I wasn't a citizen. I was just another black man in the wrong neighborhood." The street had grown quiet. Neighbors peered from porches. A jogger slowed to watch, and all the while, the camera on Marcus's dashboard was still rolling. "Call your supervisor," Marcus ordered. "Now." Cooper fumbled for his radio. The second officer stood frozen. Marcus stepped back into his vehicle, hands trembling only slightly now, heart steady. This was no longer just about him. This was a moment, a reckoning, and it had only just begun. The red and blue lights cut through the calm morning like sirens from another world. A world Marcus Hale had once sworn to change, to protect, to lead. But now those lights didn't feel like a symbol of order, they felt like a weapon pointed at the wrong target, again. He had seen this scene too many times. In bodycam footage, civilian cell phone recordings and homicide reports. Today he was in it. Not as a reviewer, not as a judge, not even as a leader. Today, in the eyes of Officer Bradley Cooper, he was a suspect. That was it. A black man behind the wheel of a decent SUV in a zip code he wasn't supposed to be in. Marcus Hale pulled over smoothly and deliberately, choosing a shaded patch of road beside an empty park bench, away from traffic and under full sunlight. Witnesses might not intervene, but they could see. Visibility, always. His fingers moved to the steering wheel, both hands high and spread, his posture still, breathing deep and steady like a heartbeat taught to slow in dangerous territory. He turned the jazz station down until it was just a ghost of a whisper, the soft brass horns fading like an echo from a better world. Then he waited. The squad car behind him idled, engine growling with the same anxious energy as its driver. Marcus watched through the side mirror as Officer Cooper opened his door and stepped out. Broad, chested, squared shoulders. The confident swagger of a man who believed the badge on his chest made him invincible. Marcus noticed everything. The way Cooper's hand rested casually. Too casually. On the butt of his holstered firearm. The narrow squint in his eyes, scanning Marcus's vehicle like it had already committed a crime. The fast, clipped pace of his walk. No greeting, no clipboard, no attempt at politeness. Just power. Just performance. License and registration. Cooper barked through the cracked window, not leaning in, just hovering like a hawk about to strike. "No, sir." No explanation for the stop, no hint of why Marcus had been pulled over in the first place, just a demand, a test, a trap. Marcus nodded once, calmly, methodically. "Of course, officer," he said, his voice firm but devoid of fear. He reached with his left hand toward the glove box, narrating each movement out loud. "My license is in my wallet. Registration in the glove compartment. I'm reaching slowly." But Cooper didn't acknowledge the care in his actions. His fingers tensed on his holster. His eyes twitched, not with fear, but with suspicion. Trained suspicion. The kind that wasn't taught in the academy but absorbed through culture, through bias, through the toxic whispers in locker rooms about those people. In nice cars. In white neighborhoods. Marcus retrieved the documents and extended them with 2 fingers. as if handing over evidence that might exonerate him. Cooper snatched them, glanced at the license, and then something changed. A hesitation, a moment of confusion, as if the name, Marcus Hale, had scratched at some buried memory. But the realization hadn't surfaced yet, and ego drowned curiosity. Cooper didn't look back at the ID for more than 2 seconds. "What are you doing in Arbor Hills?" he asked, his voice now sharp, accusing. "This isn't a shortcut to Eastbridge." Marcus tilted his head slightly, the faintest smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I wasn't aware I needed permission to drive through my own city." Cooper stepped closer. "Answer the question." "I'm heading to City Hall. I have a meeting." "Doing what?" Marcus let the pause linger just long enough. "Government work." Cooper scoffed. "Right. What kind of work exactly?" Marcus said nothing. He didn't owe this man his resume. "Not here, not now. You live around here." Cooper continued, peering into the back seat like he expected a pile of cash or unregistered weapons to leap out and confess themselves. "You a guest at one of these houses?" "No." Marcus replied. "I'm a public official. I'm on duty. I don't have to justify." Cooper laughed bitterly. "You got a uniform in the back. A badge you forgot to flash. 'Cause from where I'm standing, all I see is a black guy driving a car that's probably not his in a place he doesn't belong." And there it was. The slip. The unfiltered truth. The voice of a system so rotten it didn't even realize when it was showing its disease. Marcus's jaw clenched. "Excuse me. You heard me," Cooper said, tapping the roof of Marcus's SUV. "Step out of the vehicle." "Now for what?" "I smell something," Cooper lied, his eyes narrowing. "Could be marijuana. Could be something worse." "You're fabricating probable cause," Marcus said coldly. "That's illegal." "Not if I say it's not," Cooper muttered under his breath. Then louder, "I'm ordering you to exit the vehicle. You want to resist." Marcus didn't move. Instead he looked at Cooper directly. "Are you sure this is how you want today to go?" "You threatening me?" "No," Marcus replied. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away before you ruin everything you think you know about your job." The arrogance in Cooper's face curled into a sneer. "Jet out. You're done talking." And that's when the second cruiser arrived, lights spinning lazily, a siren chirping once for effect. Another young officer stepped out, a bit shorter, thicker, with mirrored sunglasses and a hand resting on his vest. His nameplate read Daniels. "You good, Coop?" Daniels called, sauntering up like this was just another Tuesday show. "Yeah, this one's giving me attitude," Cooper replied. "I'm gonna need to search the car." "Want me to cuff him first?" Daniels asked, glancing at Marcus like he was livestock at auction. "I'd advise against that," Marcus said. "Unless you want to be on the 6 o'clock news." Daniels chuckled. "He's funny." Cooper moved to open the driver's side door, but Marcus stepped out first, hands up, slow and deliberate. "I'm not resisting. I'm recording everything. This is an illegal search, and you're making a very serious mistake." Cooper snorted. "What, you gonna sue?" "Get some lawyer on the phone." Marcus shook his head and took a step back. "You're going to want to call your supervisor. Right now. Don't tell me how to run my stop." Cooper snapped. "I'm not," Marcus replied coolly. "I'm telling you you're out of your depth." Daniels looked nervous now. "Maybe we should slow down." But Cooper wasn't listening. His ego was louder than his ears. He flung open the glove compartment, rifling through the paperwork inside, and then froze. There, gleaming in the sunlight that pierced through the windshield, was a badge. Not just any badge, a polished, gold-trimmed, federally registered law enforcement shield. Next to it, laminated and official, was the ID Marcus L. Hale, Division Chief, Fairgrove Internal Affairs Bureau. Cooper's face turned the color of milk. Daniels leaned in, and for the first time that morning, his sunglasses came off. "Oh shh," he muttered. Marcus stepped forward, now with full presence. "That's right. The guy you just profiled. The one you lied to. The one you threatened to cuff for smelling weed that didn't exist. I'm the one who investigates you. I'm the one who gets the files, the tapes, the community complaints." He pointed to Cooper's badge. "And now I'll be the one reviewing yours." Cooper stepped back like he'd touched fire. I didn't know. You didn't care," Marcus said, his voice rising. "Because you didn't need to know. You thought I was just another target, another black man to intimidate. You abused your power without hesitation." Daniels turned to his partner. "You didn't run his plates. His name. I thought." "No, you didn't think," Marcus snapped. "And now you're going to call your supervisor. And you're going to report this incident. And I'll see you both in my office before the day is done." Cooper reached for his radio, hands shaking. Daniels just stared, defeated. Marcus turned and stepped back into his car, letting the jazz return, its soft rhythm now rising like a soundtrack to the scene of a man who refused to be small, even in the face of arrogance in uniform. The sun continued its climb as if nothing had happened, but in that moment, on that quiet street under the weight of flashing lights, a storm had broken. And it wasn't over yet. The air grew thick and taut with tension, like an electric wire stretched to its breaking point. Marcus Hale stood silent on the sidewalk, hands still raised slightly, fingers loose, the posture of a man carefully threading the line between patience and provocation. His face gave nothing away. His body remained motionless, calm. But inside, he was measuring, weighing, tracking every movement, every word, every breath from the men now actively escalating what should never have become an incident. Officer Bradley Cooper's voice crackled through the radio on his shoulder. Unit 8 requesting immediate backup, possible code black, male non-compliant, maybe hostile. Marcus's eyes flicked toward the word, code black. That was department slang, unofficial, unrecorded, for a black suspect considered problematic. It wasn't in any manual. But Marcus knew it well. He'd seen it buried in audio transcripts, whispered in complaints, wrapped in the culture of unchecked policing. It wasn't a tactical term, it was a tribal signal, a dog whistle, and it was being used on him. Cooper turned to Marcus, barking, "Keep your hands where I can see them. Face the vehicle." Marcus turned slowly, deliberately, still not speaking, still not revealing who he was. It wasn't time, not yet. Feet apart. Cooper growled, "Wider." The next thing Marcus felt was cold steel around his wrists. The cuffs clicked into place without warning, tight and purposeful, not for safety but for humiliation. There had been no resistance, no violence, not even raised volume, yet there he was, bent slightly forward against the hood of his SUV, cuffed in broad daylight, like a criminal. The metal bit into his skin. But Marcus barely flinched. Behind him, Cooper paced. "You people think you're untouchable just 'cause you wear nice suits, drive nice cars. You people." Another phrase with 1,000 years packed into 2 syllables. "You got drugs in the wheel, well. Guns under the seat. Let's see how smart you are when you're in a holding cell with no one to call." Still, Marcus said nothing. Then the second cruiser rolled up, tires crunching against gravel as the vehicle pulled close. Officer Reynolds stepped out, mid-30s, buzz cut, wearing dark sunglasses and the swagger of a man who never questioned authority, even when it bled. He didn't ask questions. Didn't evaluate the scene. He just took one look at the black man in cuffs and walked up to stand next to Cooper, folding his arms like they were lining up for a team photo. "What's the situation?" Reynolds asked, mouthy, refusing to comply. "Might be casing the neighborhood," Cooper replied. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Hostile, casing." The lies were stacking quickly now, doubling down without a second thought. He watched Reynolds' expression harden, his assumptions solidify in real time. "Want me to do a sweep of the car?" Reynolds offered. "Go ahead. Start with the trunk," Cooper said. Neither had probable cause, neither had a warrant, neither cared. Marcus finally broke his silence. "You're escalating an illegal stop into a constitutional violation." Reynolds spun toward him. "Did I say you could speak? You didn't have to." Marcus replied. "But I'm well within my rights." "You don't have rights when you're a suspect." Cooper snapped. "Ah, but I do," Marcus said calmly. "I have every right. I'm not under arrest, and you haven't stated a reason for detaining me." "You were loitering." Cooper started. "I was driving," Marcus corrected. "Then you pulled me over without cause. You were acting suspicious." "In what way?" "Refused to answer my questions." "I answered them all. You just didn't like the answers." Reynolds stepped closer. "Hey. Maybe you should learn to shut your mouth before we shut it for you." A few feet away, a woman had stopped on the sidewalk. She clutched a grocery bag in one hand and her phone in the other, already tilted slightly, recording. Another man in a jogging suit slowed to a walk and pulled out his phone too. 2 more passersby, a couple on bikes, paused near the corner, frowns on their faces as they watched the scene unfold. Marcus noticed them all. He didn't look at them, didn't signal, but their presence mattered. Witnesses always mattered. Even if they wouldn't speak. Even if they couldn't intervene. The camera lens had become the last line of public accountability. The modern shield against abuse. Cooper noticed too. "Don't move," he hissed at Marcus. Then he turned toward the onlookers. "You all got something better to do." The woman holding the groceries didn't respond. She just held her phone higher. "You're interfering with a police stop," Cooper warned. "Nobody's interfering," she said coolly. "We're observing. You want to be detained too." Marcus spoke again, this time loud enough for everyone to hear. "That would be another abuse of power, Officer Cooper." Cooper's jaw clenched. He took a step forward, chest puffed, arms rigid. You think you're clever? Think you know the law? I know it better than you. The Cooper gritted his teeth. Say that again. I know the law better than you. Marcus repeated, enunciating each word. Because I enforce the law. And I investigate those who break it. I give briefings to the mayor. I sit with the police commissioner weekly. And right now, you're about 2 minutes from a citywide scandal. Cooper sneered. You're bluffing. Reynolds had started to look uneasy. Brad, maybe we should verify who he is. Run it again. Something's off. But Cooper was too far gone. His face was red. His voice, louder now for the growing audience. No, screw that. He thinks he's better than us. He thinks he's got us cornered. Marcus turned fully toward Cooper, hands still cuffed, his tone measured, unwavering. No, I don't think it. I know it. Because everything you've done since the moment you pulled me over is on camera, and it'll be reviewed. By my office, by me. Cooper's mouth opened. But before he could speak, a voice cut in over the radio. All units, this is Captain Ramirez. Seize all engagement with civilian at 103rd and Fairway immediately. Suspect is not a suspect. Stand down, Reynolds blinked. That's our location. Marcus smiled for the first time. Told you. Cooper fumbled for his radio. Captain, this is Unit 8. Subject is resisting. Negative, Unit 8. I'm en route. Do not touch him again. Release the subject. Now. There was a silence, and then a click. Orders terminated. Reynolds reached for his keys, stepping forward with unsteady hands. Sir, let's get those off. He unlocked the cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists slowly. Cooper's face was a war zone of disbelief, rage, and shame. You said you were going to City Hall. Cooper muttered. I am. Marcus replied, stepping toward him. But now I'm going to be a little late. Because I'll be stopping by your precinct first. Where your body cam footage will already be waiting. Along with your report. And I promise you, Officer Cooper, everything that happened today will be reviewed. Word for word. Step by step. You looked over at Reynolds. You too. You didn't lead it, but you followed. That makes you complicit. Reynolds lowered his gaze. Yes, sir. Sir. The word finally landed. Marcus turned to the crowd. Thank you all for watching. For witnessing. The woman with the phone nodded. You good, sir? I'm better than good, he said. A black SUV pulled up behind the patrol cars. Out stepped Captain Ramirez, Latina mid-50s and furious. She didn't say a word. She looked at Marcus, nodded respectfully, then turned to her officers like a storm ready to hit landfall. Marcus didn't stay to listen. He walked back to his vehicle, started the engine, and pulled away as if the cuffs had never touched him. But they had. And now, they would touch the system that allowed them to be used so carelessly. The escalation had ended, but the reckoning had only just begun. For a moment, the sidewalk was still. The kind of stillness that follows a thunderclap. The kind of stillness that hints something monumental has just happened. Or is about to. Officer Bradley Cooper, still flushed with adrenaline and bravado, stood beside Marcus Hale with one hand on his holster, and the other adjusting his sunglasses as if they might shield him from the storm he had just summoned. Marcus, who had endured the entire encounter in silence, not as weakness but as strategy, now turned slightly, still calm, still composed, his voice low but commanding. Open the glove compartment, he said to Reynolds, the second officer. Carefully. Reynolds hesitated. His mouth opened to ask a question, but something about Marcus's tone, the precise cadence, the lack of panic or anger, the unmistakable authority, made him pause. This was not a man bluffing. This was a man in control. Reynolds circled to the passenger side of the SUV, avoiding Cooper's eyes, and slowly opened the door. He leaned in and, with a trembling hand, popped open the glove compartment. What emerged wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a suspicious package. It wasn't drugs or forged papers or anything Cooper had smugly imagined as he tightened those cuffs. It was a smooth leather badge wallet, neatly folded, glowing faintly in the light like the beginning of justice. Reynolds picked it up. And then he saw it. He froze. The gold emblem read, Dievzon Chuamadar Gef Mar Qs Jhalsety Poa Ice Departmenti. Ientarna Off Jesus Christ. Reynolds whispered under his breath. Cooper turned toward him sharply. What is it? Reynolds didn't answer. He simply walked around the car, handed the wallet to his partner, and took a full step back, as if touching the badge had burned his conscience. Cooper stared at it, his mouth moving silently. The words on the badge seemed to crawl off the leather and into his skin, cold and sharp. Chief, he read aloud. Chief Marcus Hale. Marcus finished for him, stepping forward now, no longer restrained, no longer silent. He adjusted the sleeves of his tailored coat, revealing a neatly pressed cuff, and the glint of a wristwatch gifted to him by the mayor for 10 years of unblemished service. He took the badge wallet back from Cooper's trembling fingers and flipped it closed with a deliberate snap. The silence between the men was no longer just awkward. It was seismic. "You just violated every code you swore to uphold," Marcus said, eyes locked on Cooper. Cooper opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "You profiled me," Marcus continued. "Illegally detained me, ordered a search without cause, used language unbecoming of your badge, failed to read me my rights, and threatened physical violence. All within 10 minutes of a routine traffic stop you had no justification for in the first place." He took a step closer. "Tell me something, Officer Cooper. What exactly was your training in de-escalation?" Cooper stammered. I thought you were acting suspicious. I mean, you saw a black man in an SUV." Marcus cut in. "That's all you needed." Reynolds shifted uncomfortably, his hands now laced in front of him like a scolded schoolboy. He hadn't led the charge, but his silence had sealed his role. The weight of complicity was not light. "You know what's worse than racism, Officer Reynolds?" Marcus asked without turning to him. "Cowardice. The kind that stands by when it knows something is wrong but says nothing." "Why?" "I didn't know." Reynolds mumbled. "Didn't know what?" Marcus said, his tone sharp now. "Didn't know I was a superior officer. Didn't know I was black. Or didn't know that what you were doing was unconstitutional." No answer. "You thought I was just another black man to be pushed, silenced, made an example of. And maybe I am," Marcus said, voice softer now. "But I'm also the one who signs the review reports for incidents like this. I'm the one who decides which complaints go up the chain. I'm the one who sits across the table from the commissioner. The table you'll now be explaining yourselves at." Reynolds' shoulders slumped. Cooper looked around, as if some unseen rescue might arrive, some miracle that would undo the choices he had made. But there was no rescue, there was only the rising presence of accountability. Something neither man had faced before. More onlookers had gathered now, some whispering, some recording. One teenager even asked, "Lo, is this guy, like a police captain or something?" "No," someone else murmured. "He's internal affairs. That means he investigates the police." The realization rippled through the small crowd like heat. Captain Ramirez finally arrived on foot, having parked her unmarked vehicle just around the corner. Her expression was fire contained behind steel. "Chief Hale," she said briskly, approaching him with a salute. "I've been briefed. I'm so sorry this happened." Marcus nodded slightly. "We'll deal with the internal channels. But this," he turned to gesture toward Cooper and Reynolds, "this is not going to be swept under any carpet." "Understood," Ramirez said firmly. "Officers Cooper and Reynolds, stand down and await further instruction." Cooper flinched. "Captain." "That's an order," she barked. The two officers stepped aside, cowed at last. Marcus turned toward his SUV, but not before addressing the crowd, his voice clear and resonant. "Thank you all for your concern. For not looking away. What you saw here happens to thousands across this country, except most don't end with a badge reveal. Most end in cuffs. Or worse." The woman with the grocery bag stepped forward. "Will you file charges?" Marcus looked at her. "No, I'll file reports. And they'll be thorough, and they'll go to every desk that matters." Then, to Cooper and Reynolds, he said, "Enjoy desk duty. That's if you're lucky." He got into his SUV and, without slamming the door or spinning the tires or performing any dramatics, he drove off. With a precision that could only come from a man who had endured too many moments like this and survived them all with grace intact. Inside the precinct later that afternoon, Ramirez entered her office and sat down heavily. She replayed the bodycam footage. Every word, every posture, every inflection. She had seen 1,000 stops in her career, but none where the truth unfolded so perfectly, like a stage designed for maximum shame. She picked up the phone and dialed Internal Affairs headquarters. "Chief Hale, it's Ramirez," she said when the line connected. "We need to talk about Cooper and Reynolds." Marcus's voice on the other end was calm as ever. "Start typing, Captain. Everything. From the moment the lights came on. I want every minute documented." "And the footage?" she asked. "I've already pulled it." "And the civilian footage?" "We'll use it all." "And what about media inquiries?" "They're starting to catch wind." "Let them catch it," Marcus said. "It's time they did." Back at home, Marcus finally removed his jacket and placed his badge wallet on the table. His wife Vanessa walked in with a concerned look. "Rough day?" she asked. "The usual," he said. She looked at him and waited. She didn't push. She knew his silences were often filled with too much weight for small talk. Finally, he added, "I didn't speak too soon. I let them show themselves." And they did. Vanessa sat beside him. "Do you ever regret staying in this job?" Marcus leaned back, looking at the ceiling as if the cracks in the paint could speak truth back to him. "No," he said. Because if I don't, who else will? By the next morning, the video was everywhere. It began on social media, where a busstander's shaky footage showed Officer Bradley Cooper yelling over a calm, silent Marcus Hale. The camera caught the tension in the air like it was smoke. The voice behind the lens said, "Why they always pulling black men like this?" It zoomed in as Marcus was handcuffed, searched without cause, and humiliated on the side of the road. Until the moment when he asked Reynolds to open the glove compartment. The reveal. The internal affairs badge gleaming like a sword in a holster. Dropped jaws in real time. The crowd's gasp was audible, and so was Cooper's sudden stammering. The moment Marcus calmly identified himself and stated, "You just violated every code you swore to uphold," became the line that echoed across the country. News stations ran it on repeat. Local channels, national networks led with it. Political commentators picked it apart. Hashtags trended. Fen Chief Hale, Fay Badgerville, Fay Blackhand Blue Truth, and the more provocative he pulled the wrong black man. In every city, barbershops buzzed. In every office, someone was whispering about the video. Every black parent who'd ever warned their child about how to survive a traffic stop watched the footage and whispered, "Finally. Someone with power showing them what it looks like when we don't bow." The mayor's office called at 7:42 a.m. Marcus was sipping his coffee in his modest kitchen, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a half-read newspaper beside his phone. He didn't flinch when the phone rang. He'd expected it. He answered on the second ring. "Chief Hale," the mayor's voice said, strained and stiff. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Marcus replied. "You sure? You just became the most famous man in the city." Marcus didn't respond immediately. He let the silence do the talking. Finally, he said, "This isn't about me. This is about what's been happening to people without a badge to stop it." There was a long sigh on the other end. "You know what's coming. Press conferences. Protest pressure. Every activist in the city is calling for reform, and now they've got a face." Marcus nodded slowly, even though the mayor couldn't see him. "Good. Let's give them more than a face. Let's give them results." By 9:00 a.m., both Officer Bradley Cooper and Officer Michael Reynolds were formally suspended without pay pending an internal review. Their locker keys were taken. Their weapons were locked away. Their names were added to the pending list, a running log within internal affairs that tracked officers under scrutiny. By 10:15 a.m., news vans camped outside the department's headquarters. By 10:30, protesters arrived. Some held signs that read, "We're all Marcus Hale without the badge." Others chanted, "Protect us from the police." Someone else unfurled a banner from a second-story apartment. "If Chief Hale gets treated like this, what happens to the rest of us?" Inside the Internal Oversight Bureau, Marcus walked through the offices like a ghost in a storm. Phones rang nonstop. His staff looked up at him with a mixture of pride and shock, as if they had known he was good, but had never imagined he would become the symbol of everything wrong and everything right in one morning. "Chief," said Sandra Lee, his deputy director, as she caught up to him in the hallway. "We've already got requests from 5 oversight committees and 2 television interviews. CN wants you live at 7 p.m. "Not yet," Marcus said. "Not until the report's written. But the pressure. Let them pressure. We do the work first." He didn't shout. He never needed to. His voice, steady and clear, cut through frenzy like a blade. Inside his office, he shut the door and reviewed the footage again, all of it. The body cam data, the dash cam, the crowd recordings, even the audio logs from the dispatch line. He took notes. He froze frames. 11:07 a.m. Cooper initiates stop without probable cause. 11:10 a.m. Hale hands over ID, remains compliant. 11:02 a.m. Cooper implies stolen vehicle. Hale ordered out of the car without legal grounds. 11:18 a.m. Reynolds arrives. 11:20 a.m. Hale is handcuffed, searched. 11:24 a.m. Badge reveal. 11:12 a.m. Cooper begins to panic. 20 a.m. Hale identifies himself as Internal Affairs. 11:30 a.m. Captain Ramirez arrives. Facts undeniable and damning. By noon, Marcus called a closed-door meeting with the Internal Affairs Review Board. 10 men and women filed into the glass-walled room. They were seasoned investigators, analysts, ethics officers, people who had survived scandals, buried secrets, and seen reputations burn like dry leaves in wind. But when Marcus entered, the room fell into reverent silence. He laid the file on the table. "This case won't just define these 2 officers," he said. "It will define this department. Either we acknowledge what policing has become for men who look like me, or we fail to serve the public." They nodded. They knew. Some had buried too many cases like this. Some had grown numb. Not today. Marcus assigned roles. Sandra would lead forensic audio review. Trenton would handle historical complaints against Cooper and Reynolds. Amelia, who once sued a precinct over gender discrimination before joining the bureau, would handle media documentation. They moved quickly. Precisely. This was not a witch hunt. It was a reckoning. Meanwhile, outside the walls of the institution, a different kind of court was forming. In a nearby church, a town hall formed, unplanned, just people gathering to talk, to vent, to breathe together. Parents brought teens. Grandmothers brought their worn stories. One man said, "They think he's an exception. But he's the rule. They just didn't know who he was." Someone else added, "We've been telling y'all. He just had the rank to finally make him listen." Local news aired panel discussions. A black former officer said, "I resigned because of this same crap." You get tired of being the only voice in the room saying, "Maybe don't treat black citizens like they're guilty until proven white." A Twitter exploded with testimonies from other black professionals. Doctors, lawyers, off-duty EMTs, all sharing stories of being stopped, questioned, degraded. All saying the same thing: "We're tired of being miracles when we survive." Back inside Marcus's office, the mayor called again. "This is going nuclear." The mayor said, "I've got people from DC calling. The governor wants a meeting. Civil rights organizations want to endorse your report before it's even out." The Marcus looked out his window. The protesters below had doubled in number. People held up signs with his face on them. One read, "Authority doesn't shield you. Character does. I'm not here for endorsements." Marcus said, "I'm here to document truth. And then I'm here to demand consequence." The mayor hesitated. "Do you think they'll need to be fired?" Marcus didn't blink. "One of them should never wear a badge again. The other needs to ask himself if he ever deserved one to begin with." The next morning, Marcus gave a press statement. He didn't no medals, no dramatics, just a suit, a microphone, and the truth. "To those who say this was just one bad officer," he said, "I ask, what if I had not been internal affairs? What if I had not kept my cool? What if I had been your brother, your father, your son, and I didn't make it home?" He let the silence linger. "I didn't reveal my badge to make a statement. I revealed it because I was 1 minute away from being another name in a headline. If that doesn't scare you, you haven't been paying attention." Reporters yelled questions. "Do you think this is systemic?" Marcus stared at the woman who asked it. "It's not just a system, it's a culture, a reflex, a sickness passed down in silence." Another asked, "What do you want to happen now?" Marcus looked at the cameras. "I want change that outlives the headlines." That night, he sat on the porch with Vanessa, the stars faint overhead. "You're not just a cop now," she said softly. "You're a movement." Marcus shook his head. "Movements come and go. I'm a man who did his job. And now I have to keep doing it, even louder." She squeezed his hand. "Promise me you won't get tired." "I can't promise that," he said honestly. "But I can promise I won't stop." And deep in the city, in dorm rooms, coffee shops, kitchens, classrooms, his face and words became a lesson, not just in power but in principle. Not just in rage but in restraint. A black man who didn't raise his voice to be heard. He waited for them to reveal who they were. And when they did, he let the world see. The hearing chamber was packed. A converted municipal hall with rows of wooden benches, and a raised dais where the oversight review panel sat beneath the city seal, flanked by flags and illuminated under sterile lighting that made everything look colder than it already felt. On one side, reporters leaned forward with notepads and cameras, some live streaming directly to waiting newsrooms and social media feeds. On the other, activists and concerned citizens filled every inch of space, some wearing T-shirts bearing Marcus Hale's face with the phrase, "You pulled the wrong man," printed in bold beneath it. The air buzzed with quiet tension, a humming anxiety that intensified the moment Marcus stepped into the room. No uniform, no entourage, just a crisp charcoal gray suit and a dossier under one arm, his posture calm but unyielding as he moved with silent authority to the front of the chamber. Every step was followed by a flash of a camera. He didn't glance at them. He didn't need to. This wasn't a press conference. This was Judgment Day, and he was not only the key witness. He was the architect of the reckoning. At precisely 900 a.m., the chair of the review panel, a steely black woman named Dr. Anita Caldwell, tapped her gavel and called the hearing to order. "We are convened today," she said with careful clarity, "to review the conduct of Officer Bradley Cooper and Officer Michael Reynolds in the incident involving Division Commander Marcus Hale on the morning of June 3rd. She nodded once. "Mr. Hale, you may proceed with your presentation." Marcus stepped forward to the microphone. The camera zoomed in as he opened his folder and laid out 5 pages of typed findings, methodically stacked. He didn't begin with emotion. He didn't reach for indignation. He simply played the footage. The body cam, the crowd video, the dashcam feed, perfectly synced to show each stage of escalation. As the room watched the images on dual projection screens, the silence grew heavy. Cooper's aggressive posture, his accusatory tone, the condescension dripping from his voice as he questioned Marcus's presence in the neighborhood. Then came the search, the handcuffs, the silence of a man choosing to endure indignity to test a system. Finally, the badge, the reveal that detonated everything. When the footage ended, the room did not erupt, it exhaled, as if everyone had been holding their breath through the entire ordeal. "I want to be clear," Marcus said, voice steady, carrying easily across the room. "Had I not revealed my identity, I might have been arrested, injured, or worse. What saved me was not my compliance. I complied from the first moment. What saved me was a piece of metal that forced two men to remember the rules they had already chosen to ignore." He stepped back. "Now, let's hear from the officer who made those choices." All eyes turned as Bradley Cooper entered, escorted not by his former precinct captain, but by a union attorney and a personal PR rep. He looked smaller than he had in the video, the bulletproof confidence gone, replaced by a stiff jaw and darting eyes. His uniform was replaced by a wrinkled blazer. The absence of his badge left an empty outline on his chest that no one could unsee. He took the stand, his hands clenched in his lap, and when asked to speak, he launched into a prepared statement, read too quickly and without conviction. "I regret the way the stop unfolded," he began. "As an officer, my training instills in me a need for vigilance. When I saw the vehicle and its driver, late model SUV, tinted windows, unfamiliar in that neighborhood, my instincts told me to investigate. I acted not out of bias, but caution." He paused, scanning the room. It was a mistake of identification, not intention. He continued for another 5 minutes, describing his duty to the community, referencing vague crime statistics in the area, and framing his actions as unfortunate, but understandable, given the pressures of policing. At no point did he say Marcus's name. At no point did he acknowledge race. When he finished, the silence was different, less respectful, more stunned by the gall of the performance. Then Marcus stood again, dossier in hand, and walked to the witness stand where Cooper sat. "Officer Cooper," Marcus began, placing the first page of the file on the lectern. "On June 3rd, you initiated a stop without probable cause. Is that correct?" Cooper glanced at his lawyer, then muttered, "Based on suspicious behavior." "What behavior?" "Driving in a straight line. Obeying traffic signals. Not speeding." Marcus asked, voice calm but cutting. "I mean, it was the area is known for." "For what?" "Wealth." "Was it the zip code that raised your suspicion?" I didn't recognize the vehicle." Marcus held up a printed image. "This is a 2019 Chevy Tahoe, the most common SUV in the state. You filed a report 3 weeks earlier stating the same make and model was your preferred patrol vehicle. Were you suspicious of your own?" Cooper fumbled. "It's different when it's not marked." Marcus laid down the second sheet. A list of Cooper's traffic stops over the past 18 months. "You've stopped 273 vehicles in the last year. 78% of those drivers were black or Latino. Your precinct's demographic is 42% white. Can you explain that discrepancy?" Those numbers can be misleading. They're from your own dashcam logs." Cooper's lawyer tried to interject, but Marcus raised his hand, politely silencing him. "Let's talk about protocol," Marcus continued. "When a driver provides valid ID and registration, and no crime is suspected, are you trained to remove them from the vehicle?" "No, but if I feel unsafe." "Unsafe. I see. And what part of my demeanor made you feel unsafe?" You were too calm." That sentence hung in the air like a brick dropped into water. People stirred in their seats. One of the panelists scribbled furiously into her notes. Marcus tilted his head. "So your training failed to prepare you for calm black men?" Cooper's face flushed. "I didn't mean. I know what you meant." Marcus dropped the third document. An internal complaint from a black teacher stopped while walking home. The fourth. A formal warning from a Latino father who had been ordered out of his vehicle with his 6-year-old son crying in the back seat. The fifth. A memo Marcus had written himself, months earlier, expressing concern about pattern of pretextual stops with racial overtones in Cooper's precinct. "I submitted this to your captain in April," Marcus said, his voice now low, dangerous. It was dismissed. The final blow came when Marcus played an audio clip. Cooper's own voice, recorded unknowingly by his bodycam before the stop. The words were unmistakable. "Let's see what this one's up to. Probably lost or casing houses." Gasps. "No more pretense. No more excuses." The panel conferred for less than 20 minutes. The decision was unanimous. "Officer Cooper," Dr. Caldwell said, her voice firm, "your conduct reflects a pattern of racial profiling, abuse of authority and violation of civil rights. You are hereby terminated from the department effective immediately." Your certification is revoked. You are not eligible for rehire in this jurisdiction. Furthermore, this panel recommends the district attorney pursue civil action for unlawful detention. Cooper stood frozen. His badge, the one thing he had once used to shield himself from consequence, now lay on the table in front of him, stripped of meaning, reduced to metal and memory. Marcus said nothing as he exited the chamber. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He simply walked out into the sun, where reporters shouted questions and microphones were shoved in his face. What do you say to people who think this is just one bad apple? Marcus paused, looking out over the crowd. I say that bad apples rot trees. And then he walked to his car, the same black SUV from that morning, unlocked it, and drove away. Same man, same route, but now, the world was watching not to judge him but to follow his lead. The city had changed. Not all at once, and not in the ways politicians like to boast about in sound bites. But something real had cracked open. The hearing was over, Officer Bradley Cooper was gone. But Marcus Hale understood that the reckoning had only begun. The cameras faded, the press moved on to other headlines, and the public's attention, volatile and fleeting, had started to shift. But for Marcus that moment wasn't a climax. It was a beginning. Because power unchecked simply regenerates. Systemic rot doesn't die with the fall of a single officer. It lurks, adjusts, waits for silence. That was what Marcus would not allow, silence. Within days of the ruling, Marcus convened a task force within the Internal Oversight Bureau. This wasn't window dressing. He handpicked it himself, veterans and rookies, men and women, white, black, Latino, Asian, queer, conservative, progressive. A deliberate mosaic of lived experience. If you're here for show, he told them during their first meeting, leave now. We're not fixing a department, we're changing a culture. He laid out 3 central reforms. First, mandatory, immersive racial bias training. Not a slideshow in a basement with stale coffee, but ongoing, interactive programs involving roleplay, civilian instructors, and scenario reviews with anonymized footage. Second, real-time oversight technology. A live bodycam review system where flag behavior, aggressive tones, and questionable stops could be reviewed by supervisors before they escalated. And third, the crown jewel, a civilian accountability council, fully independent, with subpoena power and the ability to recommend discipline outside the chain of command. The mayor's office was hesitant. The union screamed. The chief of police called it a slippery slope. But the city council, buoyed by public pressure and Marcus's moral authority, voted it through. The mayor caved. Within 60 days, the civilian council had its charter. It would not answer to the department. It would answer to the people. Marcus didn't stop at legislation. He went into the neighborhoods, the ones most scarred by decades of over-policing and under-protection. He sat in church basements and barbershops, classrooms and rec centers, not as a leader talking down but as a listener sitting beside. He didn't wear a badge. He wore jeans and a plain shirt, and sometimes just carried a notebook. At one community meeting in a West Side gymnasium, a young mother stood and asked, "What happens when they still don't listen to us?" Marcus didn't give a platitude. He nodded, said, "Then we'll be louder. And you'll have a seat at the table." At another, an old man pulled him aside and whispered, "We've had good ones before, but the system eats him." Marcus looked him in the eye. "Then we starve the system that feeds on silence." It wasn't glamorous work. Some nights he came home exhausted, smelling of cheap coffee and institutional anxiety. But each meeting, each handshake, each hard question built something sturdier than law trust. And trust was the only currency that could bankrupt fear. Inside internal affairs, Marcus initiated changes that would have been unthinkable a year before. Officers undergoing review were no longer cloaked in anonymity. Complainants were given case updates just like crime victims. Stats on racial disparities were made public. One innovation, a peer reporting incentive system, allowed officers to flag misconduct without fear of retaliation. Silence is complicity. Marcus wrote in the new training manual's opening paragraph. Honor isn't loyalty to individuals. It's loyalty to the code. They called it the new code, not just a handbook but a cultural contract. It wasn't just about what to avoid. It was about what to aspire to. Respect wasn't optional. De-escalation wasn't idealistic. It was standard. Force wasn't the first option or the second. It was the last resort. A section called the mirror test was added to every training. Would you treat this civilian the same way if your child or parent were watching? If the answer was no, the action was wrong. Period. The ripple effects were slow but visible. Complaints against officers dropped. Community tip lines got more calls, not of fear but of collaboration. One particularly telling moment came during a traffic stop caught on video. A black teen was pulled over and the officer, a white rookie, greeted him respectfully, explained the infraction, issued a warning, and thanked him for his time. The teen, startled, asked, "That's it?" The officer replied, "That's the code." The clip went viral, not because it was shocking, but because it wasn't. It was normal. And that was the revolution Marcus had wanted all along. And then, one quiet Thursday morning, he visited the academy. It was tradition. Every 6 months, the Chief of Internal Affairs would speak to graduating cadets, a 20-minute ceremonial address before they received their badges. But this time, Marcus changed the format. He didn't bring a speech. He brought a mirror. Literally. A large rectangular one, wheeled into the room and covered with a cloth. "Stand," he said when the cadets entered. "All of you." They stood, some nervous, some excited, all young. "Look at the person beside you," Marcus said. "They'll be your partner. Your backup. Maybe the one who pulls you out of danger." Then he pulled the cloth off the mirror. "No, look here." They looked. "This," Marcus said, "is the most dangerous person you'll meet on the job." Murmurs, confusion. "This person," he continued, "can ruin lives, break families, erase trust. This person can take a simple stop and turn it into a national tragedy. This person," he said, his voice heavy now, "is also the person who can save someone's life, prevent a shooting, de-escalate a crisis, restore dignity, and earn honor silence. That person is you." He walked to the front row, where a young black cadet named Elijah Carter sat with stiff posture and anxious eyes. Marcus nodded at him. "Come here." Elijah stepped forward. "You remind me of myself," Marcus said quietly, not into the mic. "Back when I thought the badge would protect me. Before I learned that sometimes it makes you a target, but also a torch." He pulled a badge from his pocket, not Elijah's official one, but his own, the one from a decade ago, tarnished slightly at the edge. He held it between them. "This is yours now," Marcus said, handing it to him, "not to wear, to carry, to remember." Elijah took it, eyes wide, voice shaking. "Sir, I don't know if I deserve that." Marcus smiled. "You don't yet. But you will." Then, stepping back to the mirror, Marcus turned to the entire room. "Every stop you make is a choice. Every report you file is a legacy. Every civilian you meet will remember how you made them feel, long after they forget your name. You can't change everything overnight. But you can change the moment you're in. And the moment after that." He paused. "So wear your badge with honor. But never forget what it looks like when abused." The cadets didn't clap. They stood in silence. Not out of fear, but respect. As Marcus left the academy that day, walking into the soft sunlight of a city still healing, he thought back to that morning in his SUV. The unnecessary stop. The weaponized suspicion. The slow unfolding of indignity. And then the badge, the shift, the unraveling, the exposure, and finally this. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt steady, watchful, determined. Because power doesn't change because it's shamed. It changes because it's shown another way to exist. And held to it. And somewhere, he knew, a future officer would remember this day, not because it was flashy or viral or loud, but because it was true. And truth, when backed by honor, was the strongest shield of all. Months passed. Seasons turned, but the city remembered. The reforms stayed. Some resisted change, of course. Entrenched attitudes don't vanish with policy. But the ripple was real, and in certain corners of the department, Marcus Hale's name had become a quiet symbol. Some feared him. Some respected him. Many, for the first time, understood what it meant to be held accountable not out of spite, but out of principle. And yet Marcus remained the same. Steady. Measured. Still wearing a plain watch. Still driving the same modest black SUV. Still waking up before sunrise to read the day's case files in silence. On one such morning, the sky barely warming to blue, Marcus left his home without fanfare. No escort, no press. Just him, his keys, and the road ahead. He wasn't heading to internal affairs that day. He was going to hand in his badge. The decision wasn't sudden. It had been stirring in him for weeks, quiet as a tide building beneath a calm surface. He'd done what he set out to do. Not everything, not even most, but enough to shift the foundation. He had built the frame. Now it was time for others to build the walls, the roof, the windows that would look out on something new. The drive was familiar. Same streets. Same streetlights blinking amber over still sidewalks. But something about it felt different. Not heavier, not lighter, just complete, like a loop closing. As he drove, Marcus passed by a familiar intersection. And standing on the corner was Elijah Carter. The young cadet from the academy, now in uniform, standing tall, talking to a child and her mother outside a corner store. He wasn't making an arrest. He wasn't holding his belt like a threat. He was crouched down, smiling, showing the girl how his radio worked. The mother looked relieved. The girl looked fascinated. Elijah looked human. Marcus didn't stop. He just nodded to himself and kept driving. At headquarters, he took the elevator up alone, greeted the front desk clerk, a black woman in her 60s named Rochelle. who'd seen every kind of officer walk through that building, and placed a small envelope on her desk. "Everything's in there," he said. "You sure?" she asked, brows raised. "I've never been more sure." She opened the envelope. Inside was his resignation letter, typed cleanly, and his badge. The one that had once exposed a racist cop. The one that had weathered protests, hearings, reforms, and long, sleepless nights. It gleamed under the fluorescent light, still warm from his hand. Rachel looked up, voice tight. "You?" Marcus gave a slow smile. "No such thing as for good, but for now." "Yeah." She stood, came around the desk, and hugged him. No words. Just years of weight in an embrace. He walked out, no crowd, no speech, just the quiet click of shoes on linoleum, and then out into the open morning. He wasn't sad. He wasn't angry. He was fulfilled. Tired in the right way, like a man who'd plowed a field, knowing others would plant the seeds. Later that evening, he sat on the porch of his small home on the east side of town. A worn journal sat in his lap. In it were names. Of the officers he'd mentored, the citizens he'd spoken to, the victims whose voices he'd amplified. And near the end, he wrote just one more line. "Change doesn't come when you shout the loudest. It comes when your silence can no longer be bought." A soft wind moved through the trees. Somewhere, a siren wailed in the distance. But it didn't sound like dread anymore. It sounded like duty. Marcus Hale leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees. The city was still broken in places. But tonight, it breathed a little freer. And that was enough for now.